I loved my wife. I still do. But in space, I met someone who wasn't even human. And she knew my pain before I ever said a word. They told us space changes your bones. Your blood. They never warned us it could change your heart. I didn't kiss her. I didn't cheat, not like you'd think. But the night she rested her head on my chest, and I didn't stop her, I knew I crossed a line I could never come back from. You can call it weakness. You can call it betrayal. But when you hear what happened, you'll have to ask yourself, would you have done the same? She didn't say a word. But when her hand rested gently on my shoulder, I understood something I hadn't felt in months. I was no longer alone. The station had gone quiet, quieter than usual. I'd been here 120 days, alone in a metal shell orbiting a forgotten moon. My days bled into each other, organized only by maintenance schedules and the automated hum of artificial systems pretending to keep me human. Amanda hadn't called in 4 days. Before that, it was short, clipped messages. Lag had always been a factor. So was exhaustion. But this felt like silence with weight. Like someone had packed each second with what they no longer had the words to say. I told myself it was fine. That I'd get through it. That I was still the same man she married. But I wasn't. The signal came during a diagnostic sweep of Sector 6B, an anomaly in the bioscanner grid. Weak, inconsistent, organic. It could have been a glitch. It should have been a glitch. But I suited up anyway. The outer corridor was dimly lit, bathed in a pale blue wash from the moon's reflection. The breach alarm didn't go off. Pressure was stable. And yet, there floating just past the emergency docking array was something red. Not debris. A figure. A woman. Her body was curled, arms folded, head tucked. A survival posture. Her suit tight, sleek, patterned with sharp silver lines, glowed faintly in the dark like blood lit from inside. Her hair was deep sky blue, braided intricately, like someone had spent hours weaving constellations into every strand. I brought her in. Decontamination procedures ran. No pathogens. No threats. But also no records. No match in any galactic database. Her genetic code was partially readable, but the rest was like trying to decipher a language that didn't want to be understood. She didn't wake for 10 hours. When she did, she didn't panic. Didn't speak. Just looked. I was in the monitoring chamber, watching through the glass. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking against the light. They were large, silver green, luminescent at the edges like something only half evolved or over-evolved. I entered slowly. She sat upright, legs folded beneath her, hands resting on her lap. Still silent. I spoke first. You're safe. This is a civilian research station. I found you outside the perimeter. No response. Her gaze followed me, tracking not my movement but something else. Like she was watching the weight of my thoughts more than the shape of my body. I offered water. She took it. Her hands were graceful but firm, fingers longer than human proportions. She didn't drink right away. She held the glass as if studying the light through it. Then she looked at me again. Not afraid. Just aware. The hours passed. She didn't sleep. She didn't explore. She simply remained there in the observation bay, staring at the stars, as if trying to find one she'd lost. I named her Lyssa. It felt right. I don't know why. That night, I sat by the viewport alone. The same spot I always took to watch Earth's delayed transmissions. Amanda hadn't sent one. I held the photo again. My wife. My daughter. A moment captured 3 years ago. We'd been happy. Or at least, I thought we had. I stared at their faces until they blurred. Then I felt it. A presence. She stood behind me, silent. I didn't hear her enter. Didn't feel the floor shift beneath her weight. But when her fingers touched my shoulder light as dust settling on old glass, I didn't flinch. Didn't turn. I froze. Not in fear. In recognition. Her touch didn't ask for permission. It didn't search. It acknowledged. Her palm, resting just there, told me something I hadn't let myself feel in weeks. I was being seen. Truly. No translator. No delay. No signal lag. No need to explain. And in that stillness, surrounded by stars no one would ever name, I felt a warmth that wasn't heat. It was resonance. I didn't move. I wanted to. I should have. But I didn't. Because in that single gesture from a creature not of my world, I felt more understood than I ever had through any call, any message, any vow. The silence deepened around us. She didn't tighten her grip. She didn't lean in. She didn't speak. She just stayed. I closed my eyes. And in that moment, something shifted in me. Not love. Not desire. Just, the terrifying realization that maybe, just maybe, connection doesn't need a shared species. It only needs presence. And a hand that no longer belongs to Earth. She didn't learn my words. She learned my pauses. My silences. My habits. In the days that followed, Lyssa still didn't speak. Not in sound, not in code. But there was no mistaking her awareness. Every gesture I made, every breath I held too long, she seemed to notice, not with judgment, but with comprehension. She began moving through the station with soft steps. Not sneaking, not wandering. Just, flowing, as if she'd always belonged to this space. She never entered a room without scanning it first, her eyes lingering on objects with what I could only describe as reverence. One morning, I woke to find her standing at the shelf above my desk, her fingers brushing across the spine of a worn maintenance logbook I hadn't opened in months. She didn't pick it up. Just touched it gently like it held more than paper. She turned to me. Didn't smile. But didn't need to. She'd begun a pattern, spending time in silence near me during routine tasks. When I performed system checks, she sat nearby. When I exercised, she watched. When I cooked, if it could be called that, she tilted her head at the steam rising from ready-dried food pouches as if trying to memorize the temperature of memory. One evening, while checking solar panel diagnostics, I spoke out loud, half to myself, half to the void. Amanda always hated silence. She filled it with questions. Lyssa, seated nearby, didn't look at me. But I felt the way her body stilled, tuned toward me. She used to ask if I still dreamed about her, I said. I told her the truth. I told her I didn't dream much at all anymore. Still, no words. No sounds. But when I glanced over, Lyssa's eyes weren't on the screen. They were on me. There was no pity. No sadness. Only presence. The kind that absorbs everything without needing to fix it. Later that night, I found her in my quarters. I should have felt invaded. But I didn't. She stood by the table, her fingers lightly touching the edge of the photo frame, the one with Amanda and our daughter, taken during a spring picnic years ago. The plastic casing had a small crack near the corner. She traced it slowly, then withdrew her hand. She wasn't jealous. She was curious. I stepped in. She didn't move. Just watched. I sat across from her, the photo now between us. I picked it up, held it toward the light. "That's Amanda," I said. "And Lily." She was 4 then. That was the last time we went outside before I left. Lyssa didn't ask what happened next. She didn't need to. I could feel the question hanging there, not why I left but whether I ever intended to come back the same. She stood slowly, walked past me, and as she passed, her hand brushed the table just enough to shift the frame a fraction of an inch. Then she was gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying her touch on the photo. Not a rejection. Not possession. Just acknowledgement. Like she knew memory wasn't linear. That sometimes love isn't either. The next day, she sat with me in the greenhouse. I was checking the hydration cycles on the algae trays when she reached out and touched a sprout, one of the few non-engineered plants I'd snuck aboard. She didn't pluck it. Just let her fingers rest near the stem. "Amanda planted daisies," I whispered. She said the world was already too complicated. Flowers shouldn't be. Lyssa looked at me, and I swear, in that moment, I felt her understand something deeper than words. Not the sentence. Not the name. But the ache that lived behind it. She leaned forward slightly. Not toward the plant, toward me. And I realized, she wasn't studying the world. She was studying the way I remembered it. That evening, I sat alone with the photo in my lap, and for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stared. Until I felt the shift of air behind me. Her. She didn't place her hand on my shoulder this time. She knelt beside me, her head low, eyes closed as if in silent prayer. Or maybe grief. But whose? I didn't know. What I did know was this. She hadn't learned my language. She'd learned my pain. And she held it more gently than anyone ever had. We didn't sleep together. We merged like waves kissing the edge of a rock, breaking, reshaping, and returning again. It was late. Late enough that Earth was only a faint dot on the outer viewport. I had sat in the control bay for hours, doing nothing. Thinking nothing. The photo was in my lap, but my eyes weren't on it. My eyes were full of water. I hadn't cried in years. I didn't know why it started now. Maybe it was the way Amanda smiled in the photo, like she had known I would leave long before I did. Or maybe it was because Lyssa had been sitting in the shadows behind me for half an hour, silent, motionless, her presence louder than gravity. When the first tear fell, I didn't wipe it. When the second did, I felt her shift. Not toward me, but into me. She moved like breath, quiet, necessary. I didn't hear her footsteps, only the way the temperature near me changed. And then her palm. Warm. Flat. Resting lightly against my back. Not on my shoulder this time. Lower. Between the shoulder blades. Right over the spine. And something inside me cracked. She didn't press. She didn't move. Just remained. And slowly, without thinking, I leaned back. Not much. Just enough to feel the air between us disappear. Then she sat behind me, legs crossed, knees touching my back, hands on either side of me, not gripping, not holding, just there. Her forehead rested against the base of my neck. I don't remember breathing. All I could feel was the pulse of her skin against mine. A rhythm that wasn't heartbeat but something older, like frequencies tuning in. I felt it spread from my spine into my chest, down my arms, into my fingertips. My hands unclenched. My jaw loosened. The photo slid from my lap onto the floor. And then she touched me again, this time with both palms flat against my ribcage, as if she were memorizing the shape of sorrow. I didn't turn. Didn't speak. I couldn't. I felt her breathing match mine. I don't know how long we sat there. But in that stillness, I felt myself pour out, not in words, not in tears, but in something far more dangerous, surrender. Not of loyalty. Of control. Her hands moved slowly, tracing the edge of my arms, not as a lover, but as a witness. Every movement said, I know you didn't mean to end up here. But you're here. And then something impossible. A vibration. Not a sound, but a frequency through my nervous system. Like her body was speaking directly to mine, bypassing thought, bypassing guilt. I saw flashes, not memories, but impressions. Amanda in our kitchen, Lily laughing in the backyard, my hand gripping a ship's rail as I first boarded for this mission. And then Lyssa. Not her face. Her essence. Her grief. Her loneliness. Her knowing. We didn't move, but the room did. I could feel the rotation of the station, the subtle pull of orbit. It was like the universe had slowed down just enough to let this moment exist without judgment. Her fingers found the back of my neck, pressing gently, sending a pulse through my spine that felt like letting go. And then my comm panel buzzed. The noise shattered the silence. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. Lyssa's hands froze. My breath caught. I didn't move. The buzz faded. A message left unheard. Lyssa withdrew her hands slowly, with reverence, like closing a book after the final page. She stood. Didn't look at the panel. Didn't look at me. But before she left the room, she touched my shoulder one last time, just her fingers, barely there, and in that light contact was more truth than I'd spoken in months. I sat there for a long time. The photo was still on the floor. Amanda's face stared up, smiling. And I realized something I couldn't take back. It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't lust. It was something ancient, wordless, something that had waited in my bones for someone to listen without asking. She didn't take anything from me. She gave me back the part of myself I had silenced to stay faithful. A part that still knew how to feel. And when I finally picked up the photo again, my hands didn't shake. They were warm. The alert came during a system sweep. Red text flashed across the terminal: unregistered organic presence detected. Protocol 9.2 was initiated: isolate, report, contain. My throat went dry. I didn't need the computer to tell me what I already knew. They had found Lyssa. The station's mainframe had finally caught the drift, her biological trace, her pattern of movement. Something had triggered the algorithm. A foreign entity. A security risk. A threat. Within 30 minutes, I received the formal directive: isolate the subject in a secure containment unit. Alert command. Stand by for remote review. She was in the greenhouse when I went to find her, sitting in the light of the simulated sun, eyes closed, head tilted toward the artificial warmth, like she belonged to something softer than metal. I didn't speak. Just stood there. She opened her eyes before I could step closer. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask. She already knew. She stood, brushed her fingers along a vine that had begun curling toward the light, and turned to face me. Her eyes weren't questioning, they were preparing. They know, I said quietly. She nodded once. There was no panic in her. No fear. Only a calm acceptance that I found more devastating than any plea for help. The terminal behind me beeped. Incoming transmission. Amanda. I stared at the screen for a long time before I answered. Her face appeared, framed by Earth's soft morning light behind her. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I just hadn't looked closely in months. Daniel, she said. Her voice was steady, but something inside it cracked around the edges. Are you still, you? I couldn't speak. She continued. You haven't responded in days. You missed Lily's birthday. I sent you messages. Do you get them? I nodded, slow, ashamed. Then why? She asked. Her voice rose. Why does it feel like I'm talking to someone who left a long time ago? Lyssa stood silently beside me, out of frame. She didn't try to hide. Didn't try to interrupt. Just stood there, present, quiet, undeniable. I could have lied. Could have made excuses. Could have said nothing happened. That I was tired. That space changed people. But all I said was, I don't know how to explain what I've become. Amanda's face crumpled. Her breath caught. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. Are you in love with her? I didn't answer. Because the answer wasn't yes. And it wasn't no. I loved my wife. But that love no longer lived in the same places in my body. It didn't breathe where it used to. It had shifted quietly, steadily, like oxygen leaving a sealed room. Amanda exhaled. I want to believe you're still in there somewhere. So do I whispered. The transmission ended. Lyssa looked at me, then not with triumph, not with possession. Just stillness. You don't have to choose, she said, her voice a thought more than a sound. And that was the most terrifying part. She never asked me to choose. She just stayed. That night, I sat in the same chair where she had first touched my shoulder. I held the photo of Amanda and Lily in one hand. In the other, the red fiber thread from Lyssa's suit, something she had shed like skin during a systems check days before. It shimmered in the low light, like it still pulsed with memory. What is betrayal, if not the movement of affection from one place to another? I had not kissed her. Not broken a vow with my body. But my heart had bent in a direction I couldn't name. A love that used to feel like oxygen now felt like memory foam, still shaped like me, but no longer breathing. I heard her step into the room. She didn't speak. She sat beside me. Close. Not touching. And in that proximity, I realized something cruel. She wasn't the intruder. I was. In my marriage. In my mission. In myself. I looked at Lyssa, and I didn't feel guilt. I felt grief. Because she wasn't taking anything from me. She was showing me what I had already let go of. Amanda, if you're hearing this in some future playback, I loved you. I love you still. But not in this skin. Not in this silence. You're still there. But you're not mine anymore. Because I'm no longer yours. The escape pod hummed beneath our feet. Small. Unregistered. Fast enough to disappear from orbit in less than 90 seconds. Lyssa stood inside it, silhouetted by the internal glow of navigation lights. Her hands rested at her sides. Calm. Steady. She didn't look like someone running. She looked like someone going home. I stood just outside the hatch, one hand gripping the side of the airlock. My other hand held the recording device, standard station issue, but suddenly impossibly heavy. I pressed record. Amanda. I don't have words that make this clean. No explanations that undo the drift between us. What I'm sending you isn't an apology. It's a moment. The device flashed red. I pointed it toward the main console. A paused feed showed a still image, Lyssa's hand on my shoulder, my back turned, my head bowed. No sound. Just light and shadow. Her fingers not gripping, not claiming, just resting. I ended the recording and uploaded it to the Earthbound queue. Then I stepped into the pod. Or I didn't. No one would ever know. The system pinged. An unauthorized launch. The pod detached. From the station's camera logs, you could only see the back of a figure in a suit as the hatch closed. No clear face. No goodbye. The file I sent was short. The caption attached to the image simply read, "She understood me." That was enough. I returned to the control bay. Or maybe I watched the pod vanish from the viewing deck. Or maybe I was inside it, watching the station shrink behind me. I don't remember. Not clearly. Because something inside me had gone quiet. Not dead. Just, done. I thought there would be pain. There wasn't. I thought I would feel regret. I didn't. There was only silence. The clean kind. Like a snowfield no one had stepped across. Not empty. Just at peace. Lyssa had not asked me to follow. Amanda had not asked me to stay. In the end, I chose nothing. Or maybe I chose everything. They will say I left. Or that I stayed. But the truth is, I crossed a line where the coordinates of right and wrong blur. Where emotion becomes gravity. Where presence replaces promises. I sat down in the chair she used to favor Lyssa by the hydroponics bay. The red thread from her suit was still wrapped around my finger. Like a ring I didn't earn. There were no transmissions from Earth that week. No signals. Just the soft hum of systems that no longer had anything to stabilize. I slept without dreaming. When I woke, I didn't reach for the photo. I reached for the silence. And in it, I felt her. Not her voice. Not her body. Just the imprint of where her hand had once rested. My heart wasn't on the station anymore. It wasn't on Earth, either. It was nowhere I could return to. And everywhere I had finally let go.